Facilitator control in the movie Influence. This educational video is intended to draw attention to the problem of facilitator cueing in a technique called facilitated communication. FC is also known as spelling to communicate, rapid prompting method, and many other names. These techniques build dependence on the facilitator, not independence for those being subjected to them. While it is not possible to gauge an individual's language comprehension and academic abilities from a video, it is possible to detect facilitators' physical, verbal, or visual cues that appear to influence or control letter selection. Criticisms are directed toward FC as a technique and not the individuals subjected to its use. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment to help grow this project. Influence. In 2018, Michael Bergmann wrote and directed a film called Influence, promoting the use of facilitated communication. His characters, none of which were portrayed by individuals with autism, used a strange hybrid of touch-based facilitated communication and rapid prompting method. Bergmann learned RPM from inventor Soma Macapedier when his son Daniel was 12 years old. Proponents claim FC as an independent form of communication, but to date there is no reliable evidence to back up this claim. Nor does it appear to be true for Bergmann's son. According to IMDb, Daniel was 18 years old when the movie was produced, about 6 years after he started spelling with a letterboard. And yet, in this interview discussing the film, Bergmann appears to control access to the letterboard while holding his son at the wrist and moving the board in the air during the letter selection process. Yellow lines are added to show the starting position of the board.
How am I doing? T-H-A-T. That was F-I-N-E. That was fine. Anything to add? M-U-C-H, much. To T-H-I-N-K, much to think about.
In addition, Daniel does not appear to be looking at the board.
How am I doing? T-H-A-T. That was F-I-N-E. That was fine. Anything to add? M-U-C-H, much. To T-H-I-N-K, much to think about.
Questions. How is this an example of independent communication when clearly Bergmann is intricately involved with letter selection? How can Daniel accurately select letters while looking away from the board? What would happen if he, Bergmann, did not look at the board while Daniel selected letters on his own? And when individuals are disengaged with the spelling activity as Daniel appeared in the previous clip, questions arise as to whether those individuals have the prerequisite skills for reading and written language. Do they, for example, have letter sound recognition, understand that letters make up words, understand how to string words together to make sentences, comprehend what is spelled out on their behalf, understand why they need a letterboard to spell? Facilitator influence in the movie. At first, it seemed awkward to discuss real-world issues of FC authorship in a movie that appears to have all neurotypical actors. That is, they appear to have the requisite spoken language comprehension, literacy skills, and motor abilities to independently select letters on a letterboard and understand what is being spelled. However, it is possible the actors modeled their performances after Bergmann's FC use with his son, and on close examination, it is possible to detect facilitator cueing as the actors attempt to spell with a stencil letterboard. This role modeling, in many ways, mimics the practice facilitators get in FC training workshops where non-disabled literate adults are put in pairs to practice the technique, though the actors probably got more hands-on practice while preparing for the film than most facilitators get in their initial training sessions. We might presume then that the facilitator actors are competent, and influence represents what proponents believe to be accurate spelling sessions. The actors and FC. For the purposes of this video, the character names are used in the examples. Francis and Gabriel. Here, Francis, an autistic 20-year-old, and his father Gabriel lay on the floor to spell. In theory, the facilitator's role is to support the client physically and emotionally without influencing letter selection. The board should remain still and physical contact should be at a minimum. Since both actors know how to spell the target words, letter selection is accurate, but the board visibly moves in the air as the father grips his son at the wrist. Questions. If, as the story goes, they've been spelling for 6 years, why hasn't Gabriel faded support? There is no evidence that fading support on a new skill takes years. Days, weeks maybe, but not years. And why are they on the floor and not sitting upright in a chair to spell? Laura and Stephanie. Here Laura, unspecified age, and her mother spell standing up. Again, the board visibly moves in the air. The mother also grips her daughter's hand. Or grips the pencil as her daughter places her hand on top. Both positions are highly suspect in terms of facilitator control. Supposedly the two have been spelling for 5 years. So again, issues of fading support come into question. And how is it independent communication when the mother allows the daughter to facilitate while holding the pencil in her teeth as she grabs the pencil and yanks her daughter's face toward the letterboard? Helen and Francis. Even though, in theory, spelling only requires the facilitator to hold the letterboard in the air, call out letters, and provide emotional support, for some reason Helen, the mother of Francis in the story, has trouble facilitating her son. She appears to be the token skeptic in the group. Doubts about FC, S2C, and RPM supposedly prevent it from working as well as it should, if at all. But except for the fact the pencil sometimes gets stuck in the holes on the stencil, Helen's facilitation appears exactly the same as the others. Like the others, she cannot hold the letterboard still in the air. She moves it back and forth, up and down, to aid in letter selection. This is most likely not done consciously, as many facilitators are unaware of the extent to which they not just influence, but control letter selection. See a link to FC and the idiomotor response in the description box below. Recap and conclusion. The 2018 movie Influence attempts to show successful use of facilitated communication using neurotypical actors. But a movie is not reliably controlled evidence that validates the use of FC. Presumably, everyone in the cast is literate and has the requisite motor skills to select letters on a letterboard. In real life, those skills for Daniel are as yet undetermined, since in an interview 6 years after Daniel's introduction to FC, his father is seen gripping Daniel's arm and moving it toward the letterboard, while Daniel appears disengaged from the activity. Michael Bergmann's use of FC with his autistic son may have served as a model for the actors' performances, and like Daniel, the minimally speaking characters in the movie rely heavily on their parents during the letter selection process. Despite the actors' and Michael's best efforts, questions arise about facilitator influence during the FC sessions. Who controls access to the letterboard? Can the facilitator successfully hold the board still in the air to avoid aiding in letter selection? What would happen if the facilitator looked away from the letterboard during the spelling activity? Do the individuals being subjected to FC, S2C, and RPM have the requisite language comprehension and written language abilities to spell? Why, after years of practicing the technique, are the facilitators still intricately involved in letter selection? Pro-FC movies like Influence are at best anecdotes or stories, and should not be mistaken for reliably controlled inquiries into the topic of FC. And finally, if FC, S2C, and RPM are so successful as quote-unquote independent forms of communication, why weren't autistic actors using the techniques hired to portray the lead characters in the film? The science. To date, there's no scientifically rigorous evidence to prove facilitated communication, spelling to communicate, rapid prompting method, or any of their variants produce independent communication. Controlled studies show that facilitators, not their clients, are producing the typed messages. Many organizations oppose the use of facilitator-reliant techniques. These include, but are not limited to, American Speech-Language Hearing Association, American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, American Psychological Association, Association for Behavior Analysis, Association for Science and Autism Treatment. FC is not science. For more information, please check out our website at facilitatedcommunication.org.